Hello learners, it's my pleasure once more to welcome you to our today's lesson. Remember, we are discussing the development of management thought, or the evolution of management theory. In our first lesson, we introduced the chapter, we summarized and adumbrated the chapter, and we say that the evolution of management has gone through various phases. That is the pre-classical phase, the classical phase, the neoclassical phase, and the modern era, or the modern phase. And we did mention that management, as we know it today, was developed as a discipline prior to 1900 AD. That is, after 1900 is when we had now formal, or we had individuals or companies or governments looking at management as a discipline. But before that, management in its crudest form has been or was practiced, the principles of management has been practiced as, when you go back, it has been in practice as long as man has been in existence. Because we analyze some civilizations, some organizations, some governments where management principles were in operation long before the Christ, long before, because he talked about eras ranging to more than 2,000 years before Christ. That is BC. So management, again, we mentioned that management, generally speaking, can be practiced at many levels: individual level, the household level, the company level, and so on. So the principles basically are the same, is only that there is a difference in magnitude. In our lectures, these lectures, we are focusing mainly on management of organizations or corporations. We're looking at principles that can be applied in the management of corporations. So we are considering, again, the evolution or the development of management thought. The development of management thought or management theory, and we say that these theories have gone through, the evolution has gone through various phases or eras, one of which is the pre-classical era, B, the classical era, C, neoclassical era, and D, the modern era. In our first lesson, we discussed in detail the pre-classical era, and these are theories that were expounded by some individuals prior to the year 1900 AD. Okay, 1900 Anno Domino. Okay, Dominis, Anno Dominis, the year of the Lord. 1900, the year of the Lord. So today's lesson, we want to focus on the classical era. The classical era. In our first lesson, we said that classical, the term classical refers to, it means old or ancient. So here we are talking about the ancient era, and under ancient era, we'll be looking at the theories that were developed, okay, the theories that were developed during that era. And in discussing the classical era, there are various schools that we will consider. There are various schools that we are going to consider in our discussion of the classical theories. There are various schools of thought that we are going to discuss under the classical era, and that is the classical school, the classical scientific school, the administrative scientific school, and the bureaucratic scientific school. It may also be referred to as the scientific school of thought, the administrative school of thought, and the bureaucratic school of thought. The bureaucratic school of thought. We'll start by discussing the classical school of thought, the classical scientific school, the classical scientific school, or the scientific school of thought. Now, the classical scientific branch arose because of the need to increase productivity and efficiency. The emphasis was on trying to find the best way to get the work done by examining how the work process was actually accomplished and by scrutinizing the schools or the skills of the workforce. Okay? This school of thought arose because of the need to find out one best way of performing tasks or a given task. Because remember the saying that there are many ways of skinning a rat or a cat. Okay, there are many ways, but in management, according to the scientific school of thought, the proponents of this school sought to find out one best way of performing a given task. Okay, one best way. As much as there could be many ways, then there was a thinking that there must be one way of performing a task that may increase productivity and efficiency. Productivity and efficiency. So the management under this school must develop or identify an ideal method of performing a specific task which must replace the hunch, or the intuition, the hunch or the intuition method. Okay? A scientific method, an analytical method, as opposed to the hunch method or the intuition method. Under the hunch or the intuition method, decisions are made basically on the basis of gut feelings. Okay? you make decisions based on your feelings as opposed to analyzing the situation at hand and coming up with an analytical method of solving the problem. But under hunch, with the manager may use his feelings or intuition. Okay, so the scientific method emphasis was on relying on scientific way of doing things, analytical way of analyzing problems and coming up with solutions which will increase efficiency and productivity. Efficiency and productivity. So the scientific branch or school of thought arose because of the need to increase productivity and efficiency. One best way, okay, you need to underline that. One best way to get the most work done by examining how the work process was actually accomplished and scrutinizing the skills of the workforce. Okay? So experiments were carried out. Observation when workers were in the factory on different aspects of work. You observe, and that can still be done now because the setup may be different from factory to factory. You can observe motions of workers, observe different aspects of work, and recommend one best way that will increase productivity and efficiency. So that is scientific. That is science. Okay, observation. In science, there is a lot of observation. We observe using your eyes. Okay, you observe the facts. So the classical scientific school owes its roots to several major contributors, including Frederick Taylor, Henry Gantt, Frank and Lillian Gilbreth, and so on. So there are many proponents, many contributors to this scientific school of thought. So let us briefly study Frederick Taylor's contribution to the classical scientific school of thought. Now, Frederick Taylor is often referred to as the father of scientific management. The father of scientific management. Taylor believed that organizations should study tasks and develop precise procedures. Okay? And as an example, in 1898, Taylor calculated how much iron from rail cars in Bethlehem steel plant workers could be uploading if they were using the correct movements, the correct tools and steps. The result was amazing, amazing results, because 47.5 tons per day instead of the mere 12.5 tons each worker had been averaging. So there was a difference. After coming up with the best way of carrying iron from rail cars and unloading it using different or correct movements and tools and steps, there was an improvement in the number of tons, okay, from 12.5 tons to 47.5 tons. Taylor was able to increase the length of work time, okay, by redesigning the shovels the workers used. Taylor was able to increase the length of work time and therefore decrease the number of people shoveling from 500 to 140. Okay. Another observation or another contribution is that Taylor developed an incentive system that paid workers more money for meeting the new standard. Productivity at Bethlehem Steel shot up overnight, and as a result, many theories followed Taylor's philosophy when developing their own principles of management. So Taylor, through observation at the factory, observed the movement of workers and changed, redesigned the work environment, designed the equipment so that the work was done in a shorter period and the magnitude of work or productivity increased. And as a result, the results were clear enough. Other theorists or managers could see what Taylor had done, and they used that to also apply or develop their own principles of management, So those are some of the experiments. Then there is Henry Gantt. Henry Gantt was, by the way, an associate of Taylor. Okay? It is one who developed the Gantt chart. A Gantt chart is just a bar graph that measures planned and completed work along each stage of production. The Gantt chart, which you remember you covered in management accounting. This is covered in management accounting, all right? The Gantt chart. And based on time instead of quantity, volume or weight, this visual display chart has been widely used in planning and control. Since its development in 1910. So Henry Gantt came up with the Gantt chart, which still is a way of measuring output. It measures planned and completed work along each stage of production. It is a graph, a bar graph, and it has been in use ever since. Okay? He was a supporter of Fayol. He made other contributions, many contributions. Number one, I've talked about the invention of a bar chart on which the process of each worker was recorded. He designed a charting system for production scheduling, and this scientific method of scheduling and charting is known as the Gantt chart. Today we call it the Gantt chart. Another contribution by Gantt is the bonus plan. Gantt devised a bonus plan for workers. A bonus would be paid to a worker who meets the standard output set. The foreman would earn a bonus for each worker who achieved the daily standard, and an additional bonus if all workers attain the daily set standards. The bonus is to be an additional emolument to a guaranteed daily wage. So came up with a standard. For example, workers should produce, say, 100 units per day. This is standard.